The verse of the day is Acts 5:29, and it says, "But Peter and the apostles replied, 'We must obey God rather than any human authority.'" The title of today's portion of scripture is called "The Apostles Meet Opposition," and we've covered some verses in this chapter already. So basically what's happening is the religious leaders, they're angry because the apostles are preaching when they were told to stop, questioning them, "Why are you still preaching Jesus? We told you you're not allowed to do that." Peter responds with today's verse saying, "We must obey God rather than any human authority." Now, this verse doesn't just give you the green light to defy all authority and to do your own thing and to use it as evidence to just overthrow the people who we should submit to in authority. But it's to highlight that if people are requiring you to step into sin, you're choosing to put them above God, which if we put people above God, that's not a very good sign. So learning that the right people won't cause you to sin is important, in knowing that God is the only person we obey, will keep us on the right path. I think the funny thing about this verse too, if you were like, well, I can just say no to any authority, the way God calls us to live is love. Anything from God, any direction, there's going to be love attached to it. So it's going to be good things, good actions, good choices. And so that's why you're able to put God above people, because people have blind spots, people have sinful spots, people have evil spots. When we have God as the leader of our life, we get to follow love. We get to pursue freedom. We get to pursue power over sin. The main thing that today's verse highlights for me is people pleasing. I come from a massive people-pleasing past. I put people above everything. I put people above me, which is why I had no clue who I was for so long, because I was searching for who I was in other people. I think as you start to walk with God, He takes you on this journey of identity, learning to know who you are for yourself, who God created you to be. And then there's going to be different levels of learning how to not people please, learning how to not compromise your conviction, learning how to not put people over God, and to stand confidently in our convictions and what God is calling us to do. This is why it's so important to develop your own relationship with God, because if you start to put people in the church, in the God spot, and you follow what they say over your own convictions, that is dangerous, because their convictions are not always going to be the one that God is leading you to do. And we can't just blindly follow anything that we hear just because certain people are in certain leadership positions. We need to be able to obey God first, rather than any human being. What is the God in you telling you? What is the God within you nudging you to do? How is the God inside of you communicating to you about whatever it is you're feeling? There have been many times in my life where I've almost made decisions because of caring what people think over what I know God is leading me to do. And it's not like it's a conscious thought in those moments, but looking back, you have more clarity on what was going on. For example, I felt so led to go to ministry school back in 2017, and I let the opinion of people detour what I knew to be true for me and what I knew God was calling me to do. And I was stuck in this like in and out, what do I do, conflict tension season for a couple months. And it wasn't until God just snapped me out of it and was like, you're not going to gain the approval from these people that you're desiring approval from either way. So I need you to do what I'm calling you to do. And it was just this sober reminder of like, you're right. It's really a false hope. It's really, we put our security in these false things of thinking, oh, if I do this, then I'll gain their approval. But you really don't if you're not being true to who God calls you to be, and if you're not being true to who you are, because you're pleasing people at the expense of you. You're pleasing people at the expense of who God created you to be and who God is. And that will never be worth it. When we fall into people pleasing or we obey man over God, this is one of the biggest ways that we break trust with ourselves, which will simultaneously break your trust in the God in you. So this is why you might feel incapable to really own what God is saying through you, or to build your own self-trust, because you've proven to yourself too many times that when it comes down to it, you're going to people please or listen to the opinion of others over what you know to be true for you, over what you know God is leading you to do. This is going to be hard. This isn't an easy thing to do because you're coming up against the world. if God is the leader of your life, you're going to have conflict with the world, because kingdom and culture are opposite. They rub up against each other. Kingdom is opposite of culture. This is why we are outside of the world. We are citizens of heaven now. We represent heaven. We live in the world, but we're not of it. We are people who cultivate heaven within our heart and are surrounded by people who live in the world. So there are going to be tons of people who don't understand us. Tons of people, just like the leaders in this story who didn't understand these apostles. Why are they still preaching about this Jesus guy? We commanded them not to. Little did they know, this is really just becoming a bigger story for hundreds of thousands of years to come that'll encourage us to obey God over man. You might be someone that's like, okay, I know this is my problem. I know this is where I need to grow. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think we are all learning how to be less afraid of man and to have less care about what people think. We're always trying to grow in that area. I think the more you walk with God and develop relationship with him, the more this grows. Because the more you walk with God, the more you see evidence of God moving in your life. So the more you want to put him first, the more your obedience grows, and the more your care for people breaks off, because you understand that people's opinion doesn't even matter. God's opinion is literally the only opinion that matters. And again, this isn't a hall pass to be a brat, because fruit of God is love. Fruit that's going to bear from your life by putting God first is going to be peace, love, joy, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. That kind of stuff comes from your life when you obey God over man. I mean, think about when Jesus was arrested in the garden. He didn't fight back. He was submissive and went with the guards that were arresting him. He told Peter, who cut off a guard's ear, to not fight with the sword. So there is a response of gentleness that comes from putting God over man. Today's verse makes me look at myself. Where can I grow in fear of God and die to fear of man? I'm always praying, Lord, help me to have a wider capacity to fear you and to not fear people. And I think that's a great place to start and a great prayer to pray daily to grow in this. Okay?